Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second session of the MBA Story series by Career Development Cell IIT Madras, which is intended to provide insights to the students into the management journey and life at IIMs through sessions and conversations with alumni. My name is Malavika, and I'm a third year student at IIT Madras and coordinator of Career Development Cell IIT Madras for the current academic year, and I'll be your host for the evening. Keeping in mind the importance acquired by MBAs in the past years and the extremely taxing selection procedures in IIMs, which, as we all know, from the premier institutions to pursue an MBA in India, we are happy to bring you another session to help you make an informed career decision. In the previous Krishna and Ashutosh gave us valuable insights into their preparation journey alongside their jobs and the unique experiences that they had. Today, we have with us Saurabh Ladha, who is currently pursuing his MBA from IIM Calcutta. Saurabh joined IIM in 2020 right after graduating with a BTech in Chemical Engineering from IIT Madras. While in INSTI, Saurabh was an active member in many teams like ESL, Monetary Reviews Consulting, and Sathi. Welcome to the session, Saurabh, and we are very happy to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Malvika. Really glad to be here.
Thank you, Saurabh. To begin with the session, I would request you to shed some light on your understanding of management and the role an MBA has in helping you make a career in the field of management.
Sure. So I believe that MBA is more of a long-term asset that you sort of gain along the way, right? So when I talk about the reason why what I think of MBA, I believe it really complements the technical skills that we develop during our engineering, and it also provides a plethora of opportunities to explore post the degree as well. So for me, I believe that it is a very good blend of acquiring a specific sector related skills. Then also the peer group that you get through the MBA, that is very diverse. I feel it's very different from the ones that we encounter back in all these IITs and NITs, BITS, etc. And because of this unique experience that it provides, it sort of serves as a launch pad to really propel us into the sector of our choice. Now, coming to the specific interpretation of management, I believe that like just like engineering, MBA allows you to venture into a variety of fields. It could start from operations, finance, marketing, consulting. There are many of them. Inside these, you would have sub verticals and sub domains as well. And it sort of on one hand, it would equip you with the kind of expertise that you would need for these domains in detail. But on the other hand, it would provide you the overarching themes of managing people, developing yourself in certain skill sets that ultimately prove for you to become a better business leader and take decisions of importance for your corporate, and ultimately set yourself in those risk-taking leadership roles. So that is, I believe, one of the major differences of an MBA from the other UG degrees.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. So now we are interested in your story. So you did point out to certain details, about what motivated you to pursue an MBA. But since you moved into field of management right after graduation, what factors made you choose an MBA over placements or higher education in your core subject?
Right. So I guess I'll start from the start. So I chose chemical engineering primarily because at that point I wanted to stay close to the core manufacturing industry, and I really wanted to explore the core engineering in detail. Post the first and the second year, where I was exposed to a lot of subjects in the chemical engineering industry per se, something like heat transfer or fluid mechanics, something like that. So that made me realize what chemical engineering was, and I believe my idea or my interpretation of chemical engineering somehow proved to be quite different from what it actually was. And then, aside from this, when we got the opportunity to try out electives from other departments as well, I was able to explore a few courses like operations management, operations research, decision models, game theory from the DOMS department, and that was really quite a different flavor of concepts of problems that I was able to work on. And that's what made me realize that, well, you know what, although I did start out to cut myself out as a chemical engineer, I believe this is something that interests me more. Now, apart from this, I was involved into a variety of teams. I was, I was trying to understand the people side of what goes on in teams and work as well. And that was also something that really prompted me to realize that, well, management is something that really interests me, and this is where I want my career to proceed. Now, there obviously I had to make a choice between Indian and foreign MBA. So I did weigh down the pros and cons of each, and I decided that Indian MBA was something that was more well suited for me, because eventually I did want to, end up in India and work in India, right? So post that, then I saw that. So one of the things that I did was I talked to a lot of seniors, not only in the fourth year, but who had passed out from INSTI and were, doing their MBAs at IIM ABCL then. So so by talking to them, I, understood that obviously we can take some work experience and then go into the MBAs. But if you're well aware about the industry, what it expects, and what are the things that we can get from the MBA, then we can actually go as a fresher itself and still be able to capture all of the experiences wholly. So that's when I decided. So I guess at the in my sixth term, in the second half of my third year, I pretty much decided that I would be pursuing an MBA right out of college. So I had already started preparing for CAT. I had also given GRE because I wanted to apply for ISB as well. And so yes, so finally, so I did apply to ISB. I cleared a couple of rounds, but I couldn't clear the third round. Then I had CAT lined up after that. Fortunately, things went well, and I got calls from many colleges, and I was able to convert IIM Calcutta, and it's been really one great experience since then. And as I said, really happy that things work out as I planned them to.
And that was very interesting, Saurabh. So I'm a bit curious. Did you also prepare for placements alongside the preparation? Because since you are an undergraduate, were you having thoughts about any job prospects?
Right. So I believe that although I was very sure that I wanted to do an MBA, I also wanted to make sure that I had a safety net of a job that would allow me to take this risk. Because I believe that MBA applications can be fairly, sort of uncertain. There are a lot of factors that are beyond our control, and in spite of a lot of efforts, sustained efforts from our side, and ensuring that we tick all the boxes, the result may not be in our favor. So that is the reason why I wanted a safety net of a job, to sort of back me up. Again, fortunately, I was able to secure an internship in Piramal Group on day one itself. And because I had sort of prepared a lot for it, I had talked to a lot of seniors in Piramal, and I had realized that, it is a great company, and I would love to work in it if it comes to that. Now, again, I did try to give my best into the internship. I was again fortunate enough to secure the pre-placement offer as well. And because I had this PPO, I could opt out of placements and focus only on CAT. And that was my plan all along, because I did not want to, pursue both the things alongside each other, and then, end up not doing my best in both. So having secured the PPO, it really gave me the freedom to, go after CAT all guns blazing. And again, without any pressure, because I knew that, let's say things go wrong, I do have a backup in the form of Piramal itself.
Okay, Saurabh. So I'm a bit curious. So you did mention about that you considered foreign universities as well. So apart from the fact that you wanted to stay back in India, what other factors did you have in mind when you tallied them up?
Right. So I believe that, although we are comparing MBAs, in spite of both of them being MBAs, in terms of the experience and in terms of the deliverables that they offer, they are starkly different. So, let's consider foreign MBAs for example, right? When we look at the typical, a typical class of a foreign MBA, we see that people have an average work experience of anywhere between 3 to 4 years, sometimes even more as well. And also the fact that we see that a lot of people, they would have changed a couple of companies. We And this class as well, right? It would not it would be very diverse in terms of people coming from different countries, people coming from different kinds of academic backgrounds, work experience backgrounds as well. Because I was fairly sure that I wanted to do an MBA early itself, because I wanted to reap the efforts of a MBA at the start of my career itself, right? So many people see MBA as one of the trump cards to really pivot your career towards a different path, right? So they spend a lot of their early years in say analytics, then they realize that now they would like really a change of taste in terms of their interest, in terms of the skills, and that's how MBA turns out to be a really good path to change the course of their career towards say management or marketing or consulting. But because I was very sure that post MBA career path was something that I wanted to do, that's the reason why I felt that waiting for 4 years might not prove to be that kind of valuable, because I can have it right out of college level. Secondly, when we look at the return on investment, right? So foreign MBAs can cost anywhere between 50 lakhs to a crore, sometimes even beyond a crore as well. If we consider the likes of US B schools like say MIT Sloan or Stanford or HBS as well. Comparing that with the Indian MBA that typically gets you around 20, between 20 to 23, I felt that the risk that I would associate by going for that program is fairly minimized in case of an Indian MBA. Finally, as I said before, that I was very sure that I wanted to end up working for an Indian firm, and that's the reason why it did not make sense for me to go for a foreign MBA. Maybe complete a couple of years there, then work for some time, and then come back and work for a company in India. I'd rather was very comfortable starting my journey in India, realizing what the Indian customer, what the Indian recruiter looks for, honing my skills in that particular direction, and then sort of leveraging those skills for a really good career prospect in India itself.
Thank you. That was very detailed. So now that you mentioned that you get to learn a lot, in IIMs, you get to learn from people with significant work experience and people from different fields and different age groups. So as a fresh graduate, did you at any point feel that you should have gained some experience before moving on to an MBA? So like you said, you prefer to have it before moving into jobs, but yeah, we'd like to know about that.
Right. So I believe that I think one of the ways in which a work experience helps is to understand the functioning of the industry. Right. So there are so we see that many jobs are process driven. That is, they are done in a very fixed way, and to sort of blend into that kind of culture, that's how work experience sort of helps. Also, when we look at the curriculum of an MBA, right, we have several courses like organizational behavior that talks about people working in groups, what are the kind of problems that we need, what are the solutions and the techniques that are used. So because being a fresher, you are not exposed to that kind of organizational level politics or those kind of circumstances where which are being discussed. I think that's where work experience people are able to really have that enhanced taste of those solutions and the problems that they're talking about. But I think apart from that, when we look at skills per se, right? So if the work experience is not very relevant or it's not aligned with the kind of career prospect that you're looking post your MBA, it would rather be advised that you step into the MBA as a fresher itself, right? So when we just sort of give an example, when we look at the career prospect of marketing, unless you have a very specific marketing work experience, it is said that you can easily get into any of the top-notch marketing roles without work experience as well. However, when we consider kind of an esoteric field like finance or specifically investment banking or trading, what we call as financial markets roles. Now, these roles warrant significant knowledge And again, this knowledge, as I said, is very esoteric. Like, it is confined to that kind of work those kind of firms. So having, say, a training experience at Future First, for example, turns out to be very relevant and very helpful. Say combined with a CFA level 1, and then stepping into the MBA and securing a role in, say, investment banking at, say, Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, right? So that's what I mean. Based on the career path that you're looking for, work experience may or may not prove to be useful. So I was very sure from the start that I wanted to get into management consulting, and I knew that when it comes to management consulting, there is no relevant experience that they look for as such, and that's the reason why I knew that I had a shot at it in spite of being a fresher. But yes, there are certain advantages of being a fresher as well. There are two that I can think of the top of my head. Firstly, that because we are sort of used to putting in like 7-8 hours of work during the peak quiz times or end sem times, in terms of, say, doing the academics, handling PR work, it becomes very I would say it is less difficult to conform to the hectic needs of of the first term of MBA when you come in as a fresher. So you can work for 10 hours straight without breaking a sweat, especially when it comes to, say, working on academics or developing your CV, etc. But it might prove to be a little tricky coming from WorkX and having that break in your studies and then getting into the mode of a student after that, right? Another advantage is that, and this is something that is sort of very known for people that have worked in fields like, say, IT or manufacturing, is that there is a certain way in which things run in the course of those fields, and it is really difficult to get rid of the bias and then have a very blank slate while learning. But as a fresher, because you don't have any bias, you have not worked in any field, it really allows you to step into the classroom with a clean slate and absorb as much knowledge to the fullest in the way it is meant to be. And it is that very innate, innocent sense of perception that you can inculcate from the teaching, is what makes learning very interesting for a fresher.
Thank you for that. It was very compact. And now I'd like to ask you about the different selection processes that you had to go through before you got into IIM Calcutta. So would you like to give us some light on that?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to getting into any of the top B schools of India, there is usually a two-part process. First is any competitive exam that you need to give, post which you would be having the interviews, personal interviews that you would need to go through. So let's talk about the competitive exams first. Now, when we so most of the colleges fall under the this competitive exam called CAT, Common Aptitude Test, wherein you would have three sections. But there are other colleges like XLRI that has its own exam, ZAT. We also see that IIFT has its own exam called IIFT, and of course then there are B schools like ISB, who do not take from any of these exams, but their applications warrant the need for a GMAT or a GRE, right? To talk about specifically about getting into the IIMs, firstly that CAT, IIFT, ZAT, they have a very similar structure, the syllabus, and the kind of exam pattern as well. GMAT and GRE, on the other hand, are very different from CAT, and the preparation itself can be slightly different in terms of the skills that they look for as well. Now, talking about these exams, they have three components. First is the quantitative ability. Second is the data interpretation and logical reasoning, and lastly, you have the verbal ability, right? So, talking about quantitative ability, this is usually, I would say, about 12th level, 10 to 12th level math. I think it's not very complicated, but it is a speed game. It's a game where you need to be very fast. At the same time, get minimum questions wrong, or try to do the questions in a very uh, in the fastest way possible. So anybody who is able to attempt as many questions and get them right in the same time, he would be really acing this section. Next, we have DILR. So in DILR, so this I believe was one of the toughest sets for me, and this was mainly because it is about really good, um, so it really tests your decision making skills. So the way it used to work back in 2019 2020 was that we used to have 8 sets, out of which you would say that if you get around 4 to 5 sets right, you would have the chance of getting a decent percentile in that. Say you get 6 out of 8 sets right, you know you would definitely be getting a really good percentile in that DILR paper, depending upon the difficulty level. So the optimal selection of the set is something that is very critical. Now, if you are not very sure whether to attempt or not, or if you lose out on your time, that's where you would really not perform up to the mark on that day. Also, each of these sets, say you would have a set that is innately very difficult to crack, but once you crack it, you can answer all the questions, right? On the other hand, we would have a set which is very easy to crack, but it takes a lot of time because of the calculations. So to sort of understand this trade-off of something that is very difficult, but it would take lesser time if you know the trick, vis-a-vis a set that is innately not very difficult, but it would take a lot more calculations and it might tax you more on time. So, depending upon our choices and our preparation, we have to make these trade-offs, and these trade-offs ultimately determine how we do in these sections. Lastly, coming to verbal, I think verbal is a mixture. So it mainly tests two of your skills. Firstly, obviously it tests your English aptitude in terms of vocabulary, in terms of understanding, interpreting sentences, and also how you can or how aware you are about the various grammar functionalities, and how much have you read in general in life. The second part is dissecting what is important, that in the sense that if you're really able to understand the meat of what that passage says, I believe you can really do well in this section. So in a certain way it tests your logical ability as well, and people who generally are able to think very critically and they are able to analyze well, they are able to really do well in verbal ability as well. Again, it is a game of speed, because people who are able to read and interpret English faster, who have an enriching vocabulary because of their school background or because of their English background, they do have a certain advantage. However, working hard and working diligently ensures that you can really do well in this section as well. Right. So I think this was mainly about the first part of the selection. That was about the competitive exam. Now I'll talk about the second part of the process, which is after you clear the exam, you get a percentile. Based on your percentile, your 10th, 12th marks. If you have WorkX, there are some points for that, and there are some points for academic and other diversities as well. And based on this system, which is very specific for each college and something that is revisited each and every year by that college. Depending on that, you end up getting a call. Based on this call, you are called in for the interview on that particular day, and the basis the interview, selections take place. Right. So up until my time, we used to have VAT, also known as written ability test, along with a PI, that is the personal interview. I believe this year, because of COVID, they have some colleges have completely scrapped VAT and they have just kept PI. So when it comes to VAT, it is usually around a particular topic. Now, this topic can be about current affairs. It could be a general topic. It could be of something very abstract. Something as abstract as orange is the new black, or red is better than blue. And you are expected in about 15, 20, or 25 minutes to write about this topic, and basis your diction, basis your examples, basis the kind of ideas you are able to put forward and really cover all the dimensions of the topic, you are given marks. Now, coming to the personal interview, there are two main things that they check. First is the technical and the domain knowledge, basis your undergraduate and your and your prima facie understanding of some basic MBA concepts as well. That is the first thing that they would check. Second thing is your personality and your communication skills. So if you are confident, if you are able to speak well, if you are able to put forth your ideas in a very nuanced fashion by really picking out relevant examples in those questions, you can really ace the test. When it comes to preparation for these questions, for this personal interview, I think I can divide the prep into 4 or 5 parts. First would be the technical undergraduate prep. So depending upon your branch, you would need to prep for majority of the courses. It is advisable that you usually do it for you prep in detail for two of your most favorite courses. And because usually in interviews they do end up asking your favorite subject, and that's where you can leverage all your preparation. Second is the technical preparation on the MBA side, where you would study a little bit about marketing, sales, operations, economics, strategy, and finance as well. Now here, compendium is provided by the respective colleges that really prove to be useful. Again, watching relevant YouTube videos, reading relevant articles can really help give the ancillary knowledge about these terms as well. The third is about college prep, and I believe this is where we can really make a difference. There are a few great things about each particular college, some sort of advantages or unique clubs or some unique thing that they would have. And if you're well aware about this, we can really make a case for ourselves in terms of why we are a really good fit for that particular college, because this is also something that they check. So this is where doing the college specific research can come in really handy. So just to talk about IIM Calcutta, IIM Calcutta has its SEMS MIM program, which is an opportunity to study a semester abroad at one of the 32 European business management schools, which is special and confined only to the students of IIM Calcutta. So, in fact, IIM Lucknow, Ahmedabad, or Bangalore, none of any other Indian B school offers this kind of opportunity. And this is one of the major reasons that one can cite to pick IIM Calcutta over other colleges. The fourth vertical is about current affairs. Now, this is where things sort of get really tricky because of the sheer quantum of the things that you need to study. My advice to the students for this is that try to make a list of all the major happenings in the last year that has happened. Then when it comes to that particular piece of news, try to encapsulate it in the form of a story that you can remember and talk about in a minute or maximum 2 minutes. And do this for all of the events, and you should be very well prepped. Making sure that you regularly read the newspapers, you are well aware about what is going on. I think apps like Napily, ET, and also we have FinShots as well. So these can be really handy to understand the specific terms or understand the specific happenings and interpretation of various journalists and stakeholders about these happenings. So it is not just important to know what happened, but to have an opinion of our own when it comes to that particular happening, right? Now, again, current affairs is something that is very difficult to know everything, and that's the reason why being honest in the interviews about not knowing things in detail can really help our case. Finally, we also have the personals and HR prep, which mainly includes profound questions like, why MBA, why this particular college, what are your career goals post your MBA, and also knowing about oneself, one's strength, weaknesses, many different instances of leadership, of overcoming difficulty, of teamwork. This is also something that they check, and this is again something where you can create a lot of difference, because having really immaculate and articulate answers here can really set you apart vis-a-vis other candidates. So I believe that making sure that all the boxes are ticked in these 5 or 6 verticals can really provide a lot of confidence when you step into that interview room.
That was very crisp and easy to understand. And now we would like to know about how you prepared specifically for CAT. Like also about if you had sought help from external institutes.
Right. So I started my CAT prep in my sixth semester. I joined Time Velachery for the same. So we used to have classes over the weekend. We initially used to have around 1.5 to 2 hour classes per day, that is Saturday and Sunday. And later on, towards the end, it had increased to about 3 hours on Saturdays and another 3 hours on Sunday. So my strategy for preparation of CAT was basically to leverage my strengths. That was mainly the quantitative aptitude, and also because I was an ardent reader, I believe I had a fairly flamboyant vocabulary, and that is something that was also a result of my GRE prep that I had done before itself, which was really helpful during CAT as well. So that's the reason why my sole attention or my major focus was towards DILR, which was my Achilles heel. That was something that I had to really work on. So to talk about my strategy, my own personal strategy about each of these sections. Um, when it came to quantitative aptitude, I had a formula sheet that was prepared, and every time I would encounter a problem that would warrant the need of a new formula or a new technique, I would just write that down, just as a memory of how this question had failed me, and not to make sure that I don't repeat the same mistake again. Secondly, it was also about speed. So I made sure that I minimized the use of the on-screen calculator. I could really do all of the calculations. In fact, without even writing them down, try to do them in my head. So that is why having a really thorough understanding of the tables is something that is really important. Also, knowing some tricks, some really simple tricks about multiplication, division can really help. Um, then the thirdly, it was about a very nuanced selection of the problems. So because we had back then around 34 problems in this section, so we need not attempt all 34. So although there was no negative marking, as such, but it was still very important that we make those choices properly, right? I mean, we did not have negative marking in the data typing, but we did have negative marking in the multiple choice question. So to I had a very clear strategy. I used to read the question in around 10 seconds. I used to take another 2 to 3 seconds or maybe 4 seconds stops to think about the solution. And if I'm sure that I can crack that particular problem in say in the next 2 to 3 minutes, I would attempt it. If I'm slightly doubtful, I'd mark it and then revisit it later. But there were problems where I would read and I would understand that either this problem is going to take a lot of time to solve and hence it is definitely a no-go, or I'm not very sure about the strategy that would entail to solve this problem. So these questions were something that were straight off red flags and that would really immediately prompt me to leave the question. And this prompt decision making is what allowed me to really up my ante in terms of speed and selection, and ultimately help me secure a decent percentile in the quant section as well. Now coming to DILR, so DILR is basically that we need to have a really good understanding of the framework that is required for each of those sets. Each of those sets belongs to one of the say the 15 or 20 categories of question that can come. Each category is governed by a particular framework that allows you to solve any question coming from that particular category of problems. So being being very thorough with the frameworks, having seen the variety of the problems really helps you to understand what kind of framework would go with that particular set. Again, it is very important that you read the set, understand that it falls within the within your strength, and then attempt it rather than going for a set which might not be the most which is something that you might not be the most comfortable with, right? So as I said, like having a flawless selection really helps. And also here is where you need to understand that once you start a set, it is almost important that you finish the set, right? But say it is taking a lot more time, you can't just continue with the set because of the sunk cost of vis-a-vis the time that you have spent. So that decision of realizing that this is something that is not going to help you further, and then hence leaving the set for a different set. I think that kind of in the moment decision making is also very critical. Finally, coming to verbal. So, verbal essentially has two kinds of questions. First is a RC or a reading comprehension type. Second is a non-RC, also called as verbal ability question. So, the RC questions usually need you to read around 800 or a 1,000 word paragraph or a passage, and then answer around 4 to 5 or 6 questions sometimes basis that. Now, in these six questions, you would have fact-based questions which are fairly easy to answer. You would have some questions that would require some sort of interpretation or logical reasoning. And there are some questions which really need you to have a very profound understanding of what the author seeks to convey, understand the logical premise, um, idea, evidence, and then the conclusion, and basis the conclusion, answer the question. So again, understanding what your strengths are and deciding to attempt the questions basis that really helps. Also, it is important that because reading the RC can be very taxing, it is important that you don't attempt two RC passages one after the other. My strategy for the same was to attempt an RC questions, then go for two non-RC questions, just to for a change of scenery and really get them right because they were my two strengths. Then come back to an RC with a fresh mind, then switch back once I feel a little laid back. So this really made sure that I did not feel any kind of fatigue during the verbal paper, and that sustained stamina advantages could be reaped in the other sections as well, given that verbal abilities are one of the is the first section that you would attempt in the paper, right? Now, coming to the prep for VAT. So I had made sure that I solve at least one VAT each day, and that sort of regular practice really helped me develop ideas. I would also discuss it with the people that I would prep with, professor as well, and ask for his own inputs. After around 15 to 20 watts, you understand, what kind of strategy you would need to apply for each of these, type, and then you can really sort of blend in and be very sure that even if a random topic is thrown at you, you can really make a decent level of performance in that particular band, right? Coming to the personal interviews, I think there is two main tips that I have for students. Firstly, it is to be very honest in the interview if you are not sure about the answer. So especially if it's a technical question, I think there is no use or just trying to beat around the bush or trying to make sense. Of course, if you're trying to remember, ask for the time. But if you are definitely not sure, do not answer that question. Be very straight that I don't know the question or I'm not able to recall at the moment, and that really speaks about your character as well, right? Second thing is that so a lot of people, especially when answering very fundamental questions like why MBA, why MBA as a fresher, or your career goals, try to try to sort of look at very bookish answers, try to look at mundane answers, and something that is very standard. Here is what I feel is I try to make sure that I make it as personalized, as tailored to my own journey as possible. I handpicked specific instances which had pivoted me towards the journey of an MBA, and which also allowed me to illustrate my aptitude for MBA as well. Apart from this, whenever I was answering any HR question related to a particular quality or related to a particular, say, a particular strength or a weakness or some sort of instance of, say, teamwork or new idea, I would make sure that I would have a small story around it or a particular example that would elicit that particular trait out of me. And this storytelling ability is something that ultimately helped me craft really um, personalized answers, and something that also was liked by interviewers. And trust me when I say this, this sort of uh, quality of being able to tell really nuanced and really well weaved stories comes out to be really helpful post your MBA in your jobs as well, where especially if you're working in front end roles like management consulting and investment banking, where you need to convince the clients, convince the partners, perhaps convince your own colleagues about a particular idea. So having a really good storytelling ability puts you in a position of advantage not only in terms of selection for that particular college, but post the selection and your MBA in your corporate life as well.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And so, yeah, and we would also like to know, was there something really remarkable about your interview process that you would like to share with us?
Sure. So I think that I had some of my interviews offline, and then because after the advent of COVID, I had to give I think around 2 3 interviews online as well. So I believe that having given interviews offline, giving interview online was a very different experience in itself. Firstly, secondly, I think IM interviews can be fairly unpredictable. In spite of all your preparation, you might encounter something really, how do I put it, unique or something unexpected, and your reaction to that really determines whether you are a great fit for that particular college. So, just to speak of a very unusual and a unique experience, in my IIM Calcutta interview, I had mentioned one of my hobbies as stand-up comedy and talked about how I was, involved in writing, and I used to follow a lot of stand-up comedy back at IIT Madras as well. And they asked me to perform a stand-up comedy impromptu as a part of my interview. Now, this was something that, although I was advised by some seniors to keep a piece ready because they did expect this sort of, like so they did expect the unexpected. But trust me, even though I had prepared for it, I was still caught off guard. And then to really gather myself, get the confidence and the ideas in place, and then perform fearlessly was something very unique. And that is why whenever I talk to other people, I always say that like performing stand-up comedy in that I am Calcutta interview is what ultimately got me into I am Calcutta, right? Also there have been I think I believe there have been a lot of unique instances where people have mentioned chess as their hobbies, and they have played a mental game of chess with the interviewers as well. There have also been mentions of like when people talk about card games, especially something like poker, their detailed understanding has been tested. So I believe that hobbies is something that they really look for, and being very thorough about being very thorough and very genuine about your interest is really important here. And as I said, like we can prepare for anything and everything, and yet the interviewers can really surprise us by asking anything under the sun, right? So that's what I think, that being able to think on your feet is one of the most revered qualities that will pay off a lot of dividends after your preparation in the course of giving and ultimately cracking that IM interview.
Yeah, it was very interesting to know that you did stand-up comedy too. Uh, like very nice. And now, after you have cleared the interview, in retrospect, do you feel that there were some things that you could have kept in mind? Uh, Also regarding the CAT preparations.
All right, that's an interesting question. So I have contemplated about various things that could have gone differently. In terms of the preparation, I felt that when it came to the competitive exam, I was fairly well prepared. I had been very organized and diligent in terms of bookkeeping as well, where I had a book with all the mocks that I've given, my performance in the mock, the question that I've done wrong, the question that I've done correct, what was the improvement that I was seeking at the time, and how my own performance had evolved over the course of the various mocks. So I thought that was something that really paid off a lot in retrospect, But I believe that apart from that, spending more time on the weaknesses is really more important, because those are the ones that really turn out to be the game changers on that particular day. Another instance that I feel is that in my actual CAT paper in the quant section, I remember the question paper from the top, not being able to solve, like I think I was just able to solve first and the second question in the top five, and then that really was sort of making me anxious, and I needed I had understood that I needed to be in a really good headspace. So I really tried to improvise in that particular moment and go and started from the bottom. I started from 34 and then worked my way up. And because the questions at the end were so easy, that really boosted my confidence and ultimately led me to solve the question that I couldn't solve at the start as well. So I believe that in retrospect, being having the courage to try that improvisation and that working out in the end was something that was really fortunate and may have been the game changer for me as well. And if I would have sort of planned something from before itself, I believe I would have been able to execute it much better. And that is also something that I would advise the students as well. To not be afraid of improvising in the last minute if you feel that things have the situation warrants the use of the same, right? Coming to personal interviews, again I felt that you know like I think I had a very good sense of the more complicated things that one would expect, but there are some small things that I believe that I did slip out on, and also something that most people would not really almost know about. In the sense that, let's say, when we talk about something as simple as states and their capitals, right? So most people feel that you know what, this is fairly easy. We learn this in school. It's quite general knowledge, and we should be able to tell that. However, when let's say we talk about East is seven sisters, so having having a detailed understanding and flawlessly being able to tell the seven states and their seven respective capitals is a fairly tricky task in itself. And I think it is these small things that I wish I would have paid slightly more attention to, so that it would have helped me equip myself, with these tricky questions as answers, and then ultimately tell sort of answer them well in my interviews as well. Also, apart from that, um, knowing that answering each question in a very top down approach, having a very organized way of thinking and putting forth the ideas and the answer that we wish to convey is something, in retrospect, I believe I should have practiced a bit more. It was, I think, around midway or towards the end that I had realized that we can almost always use that kind of framework or that kind of formula for most of the questions. But yes, had I practiced that from the start, I believe I would have been able to better my performance to an extent.
Thank you. I sure do hope our students will keep these things in mind. Now, we'd like to know about, so 1 year into the course, how do you feel about the course? How hectic do you feel it is?
So yes, IIM Calcutta has been a very roller coaster journey till now. So firstly, it started online, something that although seems very obvious now, but was very sort of difficult to grapple with at the start. Also, before joining IIM Calcutta, I had tried to talk to as many seniors from INSTI and from other colleges who were alumni of IIM Calcutta, in the lieu of trying to understand how the academics is like, how the pedagogy is like, and what are the specific things that I need to keep in mind when I start the program. So I think that was really helpful because I had a I had a fairly good understanding of what was to come, right? I think first semester was very hectic. It really helped me push my boundaries. I was like, never did I think that I would be able to work close to 12 to 14 hours a day with just 4 hours of sleep relentlessly for weeks together. But I think that's how hectic the process was in terms of preparing ourselves for the summer internship interviews. I think the pedagogy of MBA is it is starkly different from what we have at IIT Madras, especially when we look at engineering. I think the way we study, the kind of tests are they have, that is also something that has differed. Um, one really um, one really great thing about classes here at Joka has been that they have many of our courses have this element of class participation, and that's the reason why we feel that classes at IIM Calcutta are more enjoyable and engrossing, because we see that people put forth their diverse perspectives. People talk about various ideas based on the case and even beyond it. And it is these discussions that really make the whole classroom experience very lively. Now, I'm not saying that this was not the case back at IT Madras, but I believe that the discussion was confined to, the technicalities, and because technology or science is fairly objective in nature, in the sense that there is just one right answer, and hence there is a specific train of thought that leads you to that particular answer. There is no room for multiple interpretations, and that is what can really sort of limit the scope of discussion in an engineering class. However, in management, as we say, it depends. There is no one right answer, and that really allows one to explore the infinite alternatives and the possibilities of procuring a solution for the problem at hand. And many people adopt different arsenals to tackle that particular business problem. And I think it is that innate sense of very diverse opinions is what makes like a typical MBA class far more interesting, right? Also because the class mix in itself is very different. Like, we have lawyers, doctors, we have people coming from arts and commerce background. We in fact have people coming who have served in the army and navy as well. So to talk about these people, about their previous work experience and how they draw inferences of various business problems from there and put forth their diverse opinions, is something that is really interesting. Also, because being a fresher, I am, one of the younger people in this class mix. It allows me to really learn something from all of my batchmates, and that is something that I find really enjoyable, because everyone has something really different to offer, right? Also, when it comes to the preparation, I think MBA allows you to give a very nuanced structure to almost everything that you would get your hands dirty in the sense that whether it is something as complicated as trying to craft a good answer for a particular question, or something as commonplace as planning for a trip. I believe MBA really gives you a new perspective as to how you can prepare, how you can employ those skills, those frameworks in your daily life, and see things take a different course and sort of really optimize your own time and your own resources, right? So I guess yes, it has been really really amazing, and yes, I think that juxtaposition between the different experience back at IIT and here at Joka I think that is what made this experience really enjoyable and interesting for me personally.
That was very exciting. I'm sure classes must be really fun. Now,
Hmm.
I would also like to know from you about the extracurricular activities at IIM. So, since you said you practiced, stand-up comedy, how is it going right now?
Right. So I believe, just like IIT Madras, we have a plethora of clubs here as well. In fact, I think there are a lot of new clubs and new verticals that I found here, in contrast to Insti. So we have our own fest. We have functional clubs like the consulting club or the finance club or the operations club, marketing club, product management club, etc. We also have fun clubs like choreo. We have our own band. We have the music club, the filmmaking club. We have the photography club as well. Apart from this, we have other miscellaneous clubs like quizzing club. We have a club that manages all the board games and that organizes board games as well. I think that was a very unique idea that I felt I encountered here. Um, Apart from this, Joka also has its own student council. We also have other student interest groups as well. I personally have been trying to explore a lot of clubs in the sense that that really allows me to explore that particular field and also meet a lot of new people in the process. Form bonds with them, really explore what different experiences each club has to offer, and also that a big apart from extracurriculars, we also have tons of sports happening here. We have a lot of grounds, we have a lot of facilities in terms of courts that we have. We recently finished our intersection sports tournament, so that was one really great experience to be a part of as well. Apart from that, we also have other events like inter-IM competitions happening. We also have corporate competitions and case competitions happening all the time. So I believe apart from academics, there is a lot. There are a lot of avenues to develop oneself and explore in a typical B school as well. And I think ultimately one chooses a path that one deems to be a really good fit vis-a-vis the interests and the skills that one sees oneself, honing and pursuing.
Thank you. It was very fascinating to hear this from you. So now we have a few questions that we have collected from the students.
Mhm.
So maybe we can move on to them. So the first question is coaching a must for clearing CAD? And if there are any series that you took which you would recommend to the students?
I believe it depends. So, if you are very sure about your abilities, about your conceptual understanding of the topics, coaching is definitely not mandatory. I know a lot of people who cleared CAD basis the self study, although they did take some external test series, but coaching was something that is definitely not common for everyone, right? Apart from that, when it comes to test series, I believe that mock CADs are something that are really important in terms of getting yourself in that D-Day mode and really setting a biological clock for the exam as well, right? Because back in my time, it used to be a 3-hour exam. I understand it is not now, but 3-hour exam can be a fairly arduous affair in terms of really sustaining our stamina for that, being at the top of your game for 3 hours. That does require some sort of practice, and mock cats really give you a flavor of the same. So I personally had joined, because I had joined time, I also was a part of their test series, and that allowed me to give around 20 odd mocks, which I believe are fairly enough. I think anywhere between 20 to 25 mocks is a really good number. If we can cross 25, that is really great. But it's also that we need to weigh the benefits of the incremental mock post, that in the sense that we don't want to tire ourselves as well, right? Apart from that, I would definitely recommend the students to join preparation for VAT and PI. I believe that when we do it alone, we do not have motivation from the competition, right? But when we do it with, say, a particular coaching series, it allows us to learn about the way other people are handling process. We also get a lot of mock interviews with the professors in that, in that, and that itself is a really good teaching experience to understand how the D-Day is going to be. And the inputs and the feedback that we get from them, they really allow us to fine tune our answers and a performance much better, which ultimately might result in more conversions as well, right? So I would say that coaching is something that I believe is at the discretion of oneself, and one should decide whether or not one needs it. But when it comes to VAT, PI, and test series, that is a definite yes. that would really help maximize one's chances of conversion after getting a call.
Thank you. And while in Insti, as an undergraduate, what do you think is best time to start preparing for GAT?
Right. So again, this is a very subjective decision. For me, I always like to start my preparation ahead of the curve. I believe that I would be in a much better position starting early rather than starting late. So that's the reason I started in my sixth semester itself. I know people who have started in the seventh semester or perhaps later in the seventh semester and yet have been able to crack the CAT examination. But I believe that the ideal time should be in your sixth semester, which allows you to have more room, more cushion in case things go haywire in between.
And also, how do you think we should strategize in such a manner that we could carry out our studies flawlessly alongside preparation for GAT?
Right. So I think here is where like our own sense of time management comes becomes really important. I had made sure that I complete a lot of my course workload in my fifth and sixth terms so that I can have slightly lighter seventh and eighth terms, and that would allow me to focus on my CAT preparation better. So in both my in my fourth, fifth, and sixth, all the three terms, I had taken one extra course that allowed me to have take one course lesser in seventh and two course less in my eighth term. Now this um, now this decision really allowed me to have more time and invest more time in CAT preparation. So I believe this is something that can prove to be really helpful. Apart from that, I think the most of the courses that we take in our seventh and eighth terms are usually electives, and because we can choose our electives, we can choose the elective basis our strengths and really leverage our own previous skills and knowledge to ensure that the academic workload does not catch us off guard. Apart from that, pursuing really um, taxing PORs can really prove to be detrimental for the preparation of a CAT and personal interviews. So having the right balance is something that's of really important is of real importance. Finally, having a very set focus in mind, breaking down the yearly target into smaller monthly targets and subsequent weekly targets really helps, because we would definitely want to cover the weekly targets. There is the automatic pressure of ensuring that you put in the effort daily, and it is this consistent effort that really helps you prepare to a decent level and then ultimately perform great on the D day as well.
Thank you. Because you mentioned PORs, do you think PORs play any role in the selection process?
That's a very difficult question to answer, Malvika, because I myself was the department legislator for the chemical engineering department, and there I have I think I have narrated a lot of stories for the personal and the HR questions from my department legislator experiences, not only for the IIM selection but post that in my summer internship selections as well, right? So I think that while prima facie POR directly might not be the reason why you may or may not get selected in a particular IM, the experience, the networking as a result of that can really prove to be useful. Also, because PURs form a very because the PUR section is one of the substantial sections, it can be one of the substantial sections of one CV. Being a part of high impact PORs can really help, right? But having said that, by all means, if we are sacrificing our academics, our preparation, and our CGPA at the cost of PORs, it might not pay off well in the long run. So having the right mix in terms of getting involved in a variety of experiences, while at the same time making sure that you maintain a good threshold of CGPA and a very good level of preparation for CAT and TI is something that would be a much better alternative to go ahead with.
Thank you. So, if someone is having a low CGPA, like, do you think there are other means by which one could make up for it?
Oh yes, most definitely. So just to talk about the various components that go into a selection, we have 10th marks, we have 12th marks, we have the graduation CGPA, we have academic and gender diversity. Apart from that, we have the CAT percentile, the VAT exam, and the personal interview. So it is these set of 8 parameters. Of course, all of them may not be relevant for all of the colleges, but it is usually a permutation combination basis the weightage given to all of these and work experience. So it is the permutation combination of the weightage is given to these 9 parameters is what helps create that magic number of composite score that determines whether or not you get selected in a particular college. So so as you can see, CGPA is just one of the 9 components in deciding whether or not you can score well. So if you have a low CGPA, perhaps you can make up for it by getting substantial work experience of about say 2 years or 3 years. That might help you earn points. Apart from that, you can really make up for it by getting a really good CAT percentile, for doing really good in your personal interviews as well. And as Tyrion Lannister says, we need to we need to be very aware about our weaknesses and wear them like an armor. If you know that you have a low CGPA, you should be able to justify it well and show them some tangible skills and other experiences that have been a source of learning apart from the CGPA. And if we are able to tackle this dichotomy well in front of that particular interviewer and convince them how, although the CGPA is low, it has allowed you to gain some other tangible skills and be a part of other varied experiences that have contributed to your personality development, then it would not be a weakness for you anymore.
Okay, that explains. So, some of the students have expressed this apprehension over clearing CAT and getting into a top IIM as a fresher. So, as one who has gone through that feat, what would you like to say to students?
Well, I would say that firstly by saying something very cliche that I mean, nothing is impossible, right? If the odds may seem very dismal, but trust me, you can really go through it. Having talked to a lot of seniors, I myself was apprehensive about getting into. I am ABC in as a fresher itself, but I believe I focused more on the process. I made sure that I did as much research about the colleges, about the processes, understanding the skills and the specific experiences that they look for, and then preparing on the basis of that, so that I can ultimately do well in their metric system of the way they measure performance. So I think that being a fresher is definitely not a disadvantage. It is our own effort. So perhaps a work experience candidate would have to, because he gets those work experience points, he may require a slightly lesser CAT percentile, or maybe he can get away with a slightly subpar performance in that particular PI. But having said that, you can always maximize your own performance in the other aspects. Apart from this, talking about the demographics of a typical IIM's class, we see that at least 25 to 30%, if not more, of the class is fresher. This means that IIMs are well aware that a lot of freshers are looking for doing MBA right out of college, and if they see a definite aptitude, skill, and interest for an MBA in the student, irrespective of whether they are a fresher or a work experience, they would nothing would make them more happier than to have that particular candidate a part of their esteemed class. So I definitely don't think that being a fresher puts you at a disadvantage. We just need to make up for the work experience in our other avenues through sustained efforts and definitely confidence in believing ourselves that we'll be able to go through.
Thank you. I hope the students will keep these in mind. So these were the questions that we had from our side. So before we conclude the session, is there something that you would like to tell all the aspirants out there in INSTI?
Sure. So I think that in terms of preparation and in terms of the specifics of getting into CAT and the subsequent processes is something that I have already covered. What I'd say is that I think Insti has something different to offer to everyone, and I think it's very easy for the juniors to get influenced by seeing typical seniors and their courses of and their decisions, and then biasing themselves in terms of following a particular senior's path. Rather, what I'd advise them is, instead of looking outside, they should look within, understand what they want out of their career, out of their life, and then decide on how their skills and interests really match with the paths that they wish to pursue. And once they see that chemistry, then it is all about significant efforts in the right direction in that. Personally, I believe that having very good awareness about the colleges, about the processes, about various exams is in itself a very important thing and might pay off a lot in terms of really getting through as well. Also, we need to understand that I think a lot of students, especially in engineering colleges, are very outcome driven in the sense that they like to focus more on getting to a particular place rather than working on the process to get there. So I think it is this attitude that needs some sort of correction. If we focus more on the process, if we try to understand and break down the process into finer components and work on perfecting our skill, our knowledge in those particular components, then blending all those small parts together and creating the big picture and getting a comprehensive understanding of that big picture of the process, that is far more helpful rather than keep contemplating about the incumbent outcome, right? Again, making sure that we not only hang out with the people that we think alike with, but people who we may not necessarily agree with, just to see what the other half thinks, what are the different perspectives that other people have, what are their journeys, what are the efforts that they have taken. Because ultimately, although we may see people succeed in different lanes of life, what belies all of their success is a lot of hard work, a lot of research, a lot of good understanding of the system, and ultimately a little bit of luck as well, right? So that's I think that is what something that I would advise, that talk to as many people as possible, reach out to people. Trust me, I think being from IT Madras is such a huge privilege in terms of because our college is one of the most oldest IITs. We have our alumni scattered all around the globe. Forget about just India. And especially when we look at the IIMs, we have our IT Madras cohorts coming into these colleges in numbers like tens and 15s and 20s each year. And to have that kind of IT Madras network in these colleges is a huge privilege in terms of getting the requisite help, understanding about how things run there, and also that people on LinkedIn, in spite of being total strangers, are really helpful because there is one thing that bonds all of us together, and that is this that is a beautiful connection of having the same alma mater of IT Madras. So I would really, I would really urge all of the students who are really looking to get some insights about the various career paths ahead to leverage LinkedIn as one of the most effective mediums to know more people, interact with more seniors.
Thank you, Saurabh. That was very informative. I thoroughly enjoyed having this session with you, and I'm pretty sure the students would enjoy too. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Malvika. It was really it was really heartwarming to give back to IIT Madras, because it just took me back to my time where I would be reaching out to so many seniors at IIM ABCL and other colleges, and trying to understand about CAT and the colleges there as well. And now to really talk about my own journey um, to the current students at IIT Madras, it seems that life has indeed come full circle back to me.
That is very good to hear. We wish you very good luck with future prospects as well. And
Right.
thank you everyone for attending the session and spending the evening with us. Please do let us know of your feedback for the session, and we are looking forward to catching up with everyone in yet another session in the MBA Stories series. Thank you.
Thank you.